With a week to go before the draft, we're at Draft Countdown are choking on all the smoke screens. Eric Edholm of NFL.com is going to join us to try to make sense of all the noise that's coming out. And we're going to do that next on the Draft Countdown podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's edition of the Draft Countdown podcast. I'm your co-host, Brian Bosarge, joined as always by my co-host, Shane P. Hallam. Shane, we are 7 days, 22 hours, 58 minutes, and 20 seconds away from the 2023 NFL Draft.
It feels good being in single digits. It's almost here. Things have gotten hot and heavy on Twitter and on the internet, and man, there's a lot to talk about today.
We do have a lot to talk about. We got a great guest that's going to help us make sense of all of it, and we'll bring him on in a little bit. But we want to remind you that if you are watching live here on YouTube and you have a question about a rumor, a question about what your team might do, or just a question in general about the NFL Draft, drop it right now in the chat. We'll answer it at the end of the show. If you're following along on Twitter, send us a tweet at Draft Countdown. We'll answer the question there. Or if you're a member of our Discord, you can ask a question there, and we will answer it. If you're not a member of Discord and you would like to be, so you can get all your questions answered about fantasy, NFL draft, everything, go to draftcountdown.com, top right corner of the search bar, and you can join our Discord there. We'd love to have you as well. Also on that top right corner of that search bar, Shane, there's a link to sign up for the mock draft contest that we're co-sponsoring with the good fellows over there at Toilets to Titles. Where you go there, there's a link, you fill out a Google sheet, then you go follow us on YouTube, follow Toilets to Titles on YouTube, and subscribe to their Gilded Chat. Enter your mock draft, and bam, you could win money up to $500 for every 10 entries we get, $20 in the kitty, and then up to $500 everybody can win, plus probably some other cool stuff too. We haven't really decided on that yet, but everybody go join that mock draft contest over at we're doing with Toilets to Titles. Again, the link top right corner on the site.
Yeah, I feel like people can win. Like, just join. You can win. You can win it. If you're listening to this podcast, I feel like you have a good shot.
Yeah, you're smart. And you can figure this stuff out. I mean, you can be a mock draft champion like Shane.
I've never been a mock draft champion, but top 100 champion.
Top 100 champion.
Twice, 2 times. So
two-time top 100 champion. Well, speaking of champions, is it 6-time Super Bowl champion Pittsburgh Steelers? Did I get that right?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
6 times?
6 times.
That sounds right.
How many did Bengals?
We don't want to talk about that. They acquired a wide receiver this week, Allen Robinson, who feels like he's taking that Brandon Cooks route of team travel these days. Traded from the Los Angeles Rams, and they do a pick swap in the 7th round, right? So a ham sandwich, essentially, for Allen Robinson heading over to Pittsburgh.
It's almost as little as you can give to get a player, right? Like less than 20 picks in the 7th round. And they're not even taking on his full salary. The Rams are taking on $5 million of the $10 million remaining. Steelers taking on the other $5 million. So if you have the money, like, sure, I don't know. Steelers just need that big slot receiver. They wanted Chase Claypool to be, hey, here's Allen Robinson for a year. He used to be good. Let's see what happens. I don't think it takes them out of drafting a receiver in round 3 or round 4. They've been looking at Jonathan Mingo and Jaden Reed and Charlie Jones, guys like that in the draft. So I think they still could draft one. They're good at drafting receivers, but you don't have to now, and I think that's the key.
Yeah, it doesn't force the issue, and that's kind of what you want to do, like in this process leading up, right? Is to solidify those roster spots where, like, if somebody falls to you on the board, you take them, right? If a receiver you really like falls to you, this doesn't preclude you from taking the receiver, but it doesn't make you like, oh my God, we don't have anybody on the roster. We have to take somebody here. And basically you force the pick. And that's when you get into trouble, right?
Right. I tweeted about this. I think you can look at who teams are signing now for 1 year cheap deals, these veterans. Oftentimes that's the positions they'll go in the draft because they're saying, okay, we want to address this position, but if not, we got to be ready. So it almost kind of tips that they're interested. The Falcons signing an edge rusher. Like, I think it kind of tips some of the interest position wise. Makes a lot of sense to me. And I think this could be the same thing for the Steelers. You have the money, spend it on Allen Robinson, and hey, we needed that slot receiver. So if someone comes along, you draft them.
There you go. Only thing cheaper than that would have been a conditional 7th round pick in the 2025 draft.
There's been some of those that, and then you
just
pick at the end.
That generally doesn't, that never says anything well about the player you're acquiring, right? Because they're probably getting cut. Shane, let's talk about some draft props. We've talked about these a few times now, and we've seen some. There's not a whole lot of them out there. Our speculation is these online books took a bath last year with some of these draft props, right?
Yeah. I don't think last year went well combine draft wise for a lot of the sports books. So they've been a little slower to get things out. They're coming out now, but they've been a little bit slower on some of those.
Let's table this. We'll come back to it in just a little bit because we've got a special guest that's we're going to weed some of this stuff out, right? Yeah. We've got a lot of rumors. We got to address a lot of stuff happening in the NFL, and who better to bring on than a good friend of the show and a man who writes for NFL.com. It's our good friend, Eric Edholm, Chicago's finest, baby.
Better late than never. I'm sorry I'm a little bit tardy. I had to restart the laptop and technical issues and kids in the background. My hair is looking terrible. I mean, everything's falling apart, but the draft can bring us together, boys. I'm confident of this.
Hey, look, man, it's all wild for everybody this time of year, but especially a guy like you who does this full time for a living. Me and Shane, we're part timers here, but Eric, you're full head of steam here, man. So we're gonna.
You guys are the Wonder Twins, though, man. You activate, man. You put it together and just
make it happen.
Happens. Come on, let's go. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there,
Eric. Let's get right into it. A week ago, it was something different. Now, you look at the odds on every book, minus 1,500 for Bryce Young to go number 1.
Yeah.
What flipped here to all of a sudden go from this, and now Bryce Young he's the number 1 pick in the draft? Where the cards turned in.
Yeah, it is, and I was wrong. I had, you can go look. I don't remember exactly how. 5 minutes after the trade happened between the Panthers and Bears, I said, I just have a feeling it's Stroud. I just, that just seemed to point in his direction. You could see Frank Reich wanting a guy with a little bit more stature in the pocket, a little bit more of a traditional passer in that regard, I guess. But somebody who also has, on occasion, flashed, like Northwestern, Georgia, a couple games where CJ Stroud showed that ability. And it just sort of, there were a few other factors, things that I'd picked up along the way that I think Stroud's their guy. And then he wasn't. And the question I've been asking, because I don't know the answer, and I don't know that it's been reported anywhere, but I don't think you can't tell me that it's 100% in that room. You had to think that there were some pretty strong debates, I would guess. I felt like I could kind of read the tea leaves and that there were some people in that room who liked Stroud better, and that's their prerogative. You don't expect 100% except for generational type prospects. So how much influence does David Tepper have in this? I don't know. Is he the thumb on the scale? Is he the tie-breaking vote? Is he the number one vote? Does he not have a vote? Does he? I mean, of course he does. Owners have a vote on everything, but you know what I'm saying? I'm just throwing that out there. Take that whatever direction you want. I'm sure, obviously, Fitterer had a ton of say in the matter. I'm sure they asked Josh McCown, the new QB coach, what he thought. Frank Reich is going to have a big say as the new head coach. Other personnel guys, but I just wonder. I don't know how it tilted like that.
Well, Eric, I'll kind of go a little bit lower down the board here. I have a question. If you could give me in the crystal ball and show me where one player is going in this first round, to me it'd be Bijan Robinson, the running back out of Texas, because I don't know. He could fall, he could go higher. Where do you think he goes with the running back position being devalued? A lot of the teams looking at him, like Philadelphia, Howie Roseman's not a guy that drafts a running back. What happens with Bijan?
Yeah, I thought you were saying if I could predict a lower pick, which one would it be? And so that's why I was surprised you said Bijan, because I thought, oh, that's like the guy that nobody knows where he's going, right? Yeah. I will say there's a team, I think, in the top 10, not counting the Eagles, because I don't know honestly what if they would, Jordan Davis last year, I would say arguably, even though he's a defensive tackle, theoretically that goes against their draft philosophy too, right? You don't draft 2-down players and that sort of thing, but I mean, they've broken that rule before too. They drafted Danny Watkins, a 27-year-old guard in the first round years ago, and that's still the same philosophy as when Howie, got there and stuff. But I would say, just putting them to the side for a minute, there has been surprising recent buzz on Atlanta at 8 as an early team to watch. And I kept thinking to myself, boy, after you ran the ball effectively without him last year, right? I mean, it wasn't like it was a difficult thing, right? And I know that not every draft pick is just filling a hole or solving a problem. You want to draft as many great players as you want, but that wasn't the first player I came up with when I was, starting in January and thinking like, what direction could Atlanta go? I didn't start with Bijan Robinson, but there's been some buzz there, enough that I'm kind of sitting up in my chair and taking notice. Otherwise, obviously the Cowboys have done work on him. They're farther down the chain. I'm sure, they would love to have him, right? I think they'd have to move up for him though. Is Tampa interested? Maybe. So, but that's 19 and 25 or whatever. There's a long way between 8 and 19. Is there another team in there that says, screw it, we love the guy? Do we need a running back at this very moment? No, but who cares? It's possible. So it just depends on maybe who's still sitting there, if there are any movement, and then if Atlanta or some other team in that area passes on him, how far does he get? I don't know.
He's got to be the hardest player for all of us to mock right now, right?
I think so, right? Yeah.
Maybe
quarterback 4 too. I don't know. I guess there's enough, trade possibilities and whatnot, or QB 3 or 4 could end up going to a team that lands at a trade. But yeah, Bijan's the one who we know he's going first round. We just don't. I don't know. There's not a real strong arrow pointing one way or the other.
Pick 2, Houston. We just assumed it would be a quarterback. We assumed it would be Bryce Young because I think all three of us, as soon as Carolina got the pick, it was Stroud. You weren't the only one here. Both of us were on that same boat as well. So we assumed Young to Houston. Now it appears that's who they wanted the whole time was Young. That doesn't appear to be a secret now.
Yes, sir.
So now the odds have shifted to them going with Will Anderson as the pick at 2. If that is the case, one, is that just a question of let's get the best player in the draft? And 2, are they a potential possibility to move back up into the top 10 to get one of the other quarterbacks, even as high as 3 with Arizona to come back all the way up? They've got the capital to do it. So it's not like I mean, it wouldn't even hurt them to unload some of these draft picks that they've got. So that, I guess we'll call that a two-part question. Is it Will Anderson at 2? Is it Tyree Wilson at 2? Or is it one of the quarterbacks? And do they come back up to get a quarterback?
Yeah, you covered a lot on that, and that's exactly where I would have gone, which is, I think they like Will Anderson, but I wonder, how much they're intrigued by Tyree Wilson. And I mean, you see a guy like James Lipford in the scouting department, an up and comer, future GM. A lot of people think around the league. He kind of pointed him towards Stingley and some other guys last year. I think they leaned heavily on his influence. And so, I mean, you just try to think about how last year's draft went and how, it can go a little different way than we're all thinking. Right. And so I had heard at the combine when, I guess at that point, the trade had not happened. I'm trying to remember the timing on this, but yeah, basically that QB wasn't a lock at 2. No, and I was a little surprised, but I thought, okay, yeah, I guess I can see it, right? If they think they can come up from 12, and obviously a lot's changed since then, right? And so maybe there are a couple teams that love Will Levis more than we realized. And Levis could be the quarterback who goes, he's kind of gone in this like, whoa, now he's back up. He could end up going the 3rd pick or the 4th. I think he's going to end up going either to a trade at 3 or a Colts just sit there and take him at 4. So now what happens at Anthony Richardson, I don't know. But yeah, then you're thinking, okay, well, which quarterback can they make that move? Are they willing to do that? Okay, if it's doable that way, seems like an awful lot of effort, but to instead of just grabbing the quarterback and then maybe getting a similar quality edge, because I could see Nolan Smith slipping a little or whatever, I don't know. It just it feels like they're also opening the door for not taking a quarterback in round 1. It's possible. I mean, I don't know. I think there'd be torches and pitchforks.
It feels like malpractice if they trot out Davis Mills again.
Right.
Sorry.
And they also brought in, what was his name? Who's the veteran they brought in? I'm just blanking. But yeah, I mean, 2 guys who don't have a future with the with the franchise, but they're placeholders or whatever. And this is setting the table for what? That's what everyone's been expecting and debating for 4 months now. And I don't know. I still haven't figured out what I'm doing on my last mock. So this year's crazy, guys. I don't know. This is a hard one.
I feel like it always ends up pretty tough at some point.
Yeah, last year was the first year where I felt like I kind of had and the no quarterback in the top, 18 picks or whatever made it easier, I thought, just because you just kind of worked your way and then, okay, pick the pick. And if you know one, you lock it in. And then last year felt a lot easier than this to me. But yeah, most years is pretty rough.
So Eric, we see, flash across all these players with pre-draft visits, and the article came out today, the Kalijah Cansey quote that he had no pre-draft visits in this process. I guess for people listening, how important are the pre-draft visits in terms of predicting where a player is going to go? Does it matter? Does it not matter? What's the deal with pre-draft visits?
Yeah, they're interesting, right? I mean, like do I look at him and sort of pay attention to him? Of course. But what I end up usually doing is just looking like, okay, the Packers have brought in 6 tight ends. That's a good number, for that position. That's a big number. They're going to draft a tight end. Is it 15 or is it Musgrave at 45? Whatever. I think of it like in those terms, or interesting, this team didn't bring in this position at all. I mean, does that matter? I don't know. I guess what I should do is spend more time in May. I prefer to be by the beach, but spend more time in May thinking about what did those visits matter, right? Like, let's see how many of those teams actually drafted those players, because I feel like I'm giving you more of an anecdotal answer than a real hard data one. I haven't seen a lot of that reported before, so maybe I'll look into that. But yeah, I tend to just look at it like that. The Cansey thing is pretty fascinating, though. I mean, you'd think for a top 50 guy, even if they did the car wash at the combine and met with 24 teams or whatever the heck it is, you'd think there'd still be one that, we see multiple, like the Bears have had like 7 or 8 guys they've met multiple times with and made it very public who they're, it's just interesting that somebody who, at least has been sort of comped to Aaron Donald. I don't think he's that, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that he's not made a visit yet. I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
I don't want to make this all about the QBs, but there's been some reports come out today about CJ Stroud. So I feel like I have to see what you've heard about this. Said reports coming out that he bombed the S2 test or whatever that apparently predicts success for quarterbacks. Reports that he's hard to coach, which me and Shane talked about this beforehand, doesn't really seem to match up with what we've heard. And then he apparently ghosted the Manning Academy, which that was said in a podcast by Brady Quinn. So have you heard about any of this, and do you buy any of it?
Well, first of all, I was supposed to go to the Manning camp last year. I assume it was last year if he was like a counselor or something like that. I'm guessing. I don't know when this alleged Manning snubbing occurred, but first of all, don't underweight the heft of the Manning pull. I mean, honestly, like they're like the sweet talking, football mafia, man. Like you cross any of them, they can get on you. But I'm kidding. I love them. They're great. But yeah, I don't know any of that specifically. I mean, I've heard mostly good things, that he's a sort of a humble kid, not exactly, I mean, he's a winner. He's a cool, calm, collected guy. I don't know about the ego or the big head or anything like that. Just not something I've specifically heard. So this is all a little bit new to me, and I wonder, I mean, he was kind of, I think his teammates saw him as like this super chill guy. Like he wasn't intense. He wasn't big time. He was, I mean, his dad and that whole situation, that would be pretty humbling, I think. And I don't know. It just feels like it runs anathema to what I've heard to this point.
Yeah. What who are some players maybe that you're higher on, no matter what their draft capital is going to be like, that you watched, like, hey, I think this guy's going to be good or better than where he'll get drafted?
Well, that's a good question. It's funny because I haven't been able to ask, like, I poke around and see what other people say at later in the process. I really try to avoid mock drafts till about March, just looking at them for bias reasons. I don't want to, I want to be able to figure it out myself and do it that way. I mean, you can't avoid it, right? But so I don't know where Tyreek Stevenson is kind of rated to go. I mean, what have you guys been hearing range wise? I don't think I've even asked anybody personnel wise about him as far as that guy. I'm guessing day 2, but like any other outside of that range that you guys have heard at all?
Most of the simulators that I've gone through, he ends up coming off the board somewhere between like 60 and 80. So
okay. Yeah. So then I probably do like him a little bit better than that. I would probably have him. I think my last top 100 list, I want to say, was like in the 65 to 75 range. I don't remember exactly where, but something like that. And I don't know. I see a pretty good player. I mean, he's got some stuff he's got to clean up a little bit, but some extra steps. He'll get thrown off balance a little bit, and there's a little bit of stiffness there. But boy, I think his instincts are really good. He's a tough hitter and tackler. He's got nice length. His physical traits are really good. I just, he got his hands on a lot of passes the last couple of years. Not a high interception total. I don't know, 3 or 4 in his career or something like that, but good arm length, good athleticism, pretty clean injury history that I think he's had a couple little minor things, but I like the player and feel like once he got to Miami, he, sort of blossomed a little bit. And so I'd take that guy at the end of the second round or early third. Absolutely.
I like it. So we talked a little bit about Arizona at 3. Go on the record right now. Who is the team that's trading up to 3? Because we know at this point it would almost be a shock if they didn't move out of 3, right?
Yeah.
So who's the team that's going to come up?
I mean, I guess I guess there could be a stunner at 2 that throws everything on hold, right? But yeah, you're right. I think 3 is the action spot. Caserio said there was action at 2. I kind of think they're going to be stuck there. I don't know that anybody's going to call their bluff. I think they're really going to end up having to make a pick. So 3 is probably the spot. And I'll throw a team out there. Well, first of all, I'd heard the Titans were kind of sniffing around a little bit. That was more of a last week rumor, but I don't, again, the timing of these things. I went back, and this is an experiment I did one year. I went back and kept kind of closer notes of who told me what and when and all that stuff. And the highest percentage of good information that I got was either at the combine or like almost immediately afterward, from like April 1st on, less so, right? So anyway, the point being, what were we talking about? I got off balance.
Who's the team that's going to come up to 3?
Right. It's like, what point am I making? So I had heard Titans were a team to watch, but I think it could be the Raiders. So especially if Stroud were to slip, I could see that pairing making a lot of sense. I mean, McDaniels wants that kind of slow pulse guy who's accurate. I think, you'll give up a little arm strength for, some of the intangible stuff that I think Stroud has. So that's a possibility, because with Garoppolo there, first of all, it's a 1-year deal essentially. And we know his injury history, and that's kind of a big deal. I mean, and I think they're in the quarterback market. So they're one to watch. You guys got any other ideas about who might be moving up in that spot?
I like the Colts.
I feel like they're so just like, no, we're gonna,
especially if Stroud's on the board. If Stroud's on the board, it's like I've already got a deal in place for this scenario. If I'm the Colts,
what you're saying makes perfect sense to me. And if they did it, bravo, go get him, right? Like if that's your guy, go get him. But I just don't know if they're gonna do that. Like the one takeaway I got from, maybe I'm misreading it, but like Chris Ballard at the combine, he did a little session off to the side, and he basically said he's like you hate to move up and give up those picks unless it's the right guy. And he just, like, that little grimace in his face, it was almost like he was prepping us for the idea that I think he likes, if I had to guess, Bryce Young a lot, Stroud, but I think Levis is somebody that he's really into. I think would he trade up for Levis with Stroud on the board? Is that even a possibility?
Could happen. Someone could.
I mean, that would be
for the sake of our live stream. I really hope that's not during the time that I'm in here on Thursday night, because I may go all Shane Bruce Irvin if that was the case.
The veins in your neck, right? Yeah. Oh my God. I think something weird is going to happen up there. I don't know what, but I think we'll see. We'll have an early shocker in this draft.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if it happens. If number 2 gets known, maybe it happens pre-draft. Yeah, we could. Real quick, talk about this receiver class a bit. I feel like I'm higher on it than the NFL seems to be, but mock drafts still have 4 or 5 sometimes receivers going in the first round. Like, it seems to be some cognitive dissonance here.
I agree. Yeah. And first of all, I thought and I really like Bob McGinn. I've known him. He's always been nice to me or whatever. Like, first, when his, what they call like his hit pieces, right? I'm laughing, right? Like the scouts just taking a dump all over every single player in the league, and everybody sucks. And, so of course today is like Bob McGinn wide receiver tight end day. And I was reading it earlier, just getting a good, late draft season chuckle at that. But I think it's a little harsh to be like, this is the worst class to ever exist. And what are we doing here? Really? This is the worst ever? Or maybe is it lacking some size. Yeah. Overall, I think there's a lot of small guys. Is it lacking some high end, like Jamar Chase, Jefferson type receivers? Absolutely. Yeah. Right. We're projecting if we say that Jackson Smith and Jigba is our number one receiver, which I am, we're saying like, yeah, he was all right. He missed last year. I mean, so did Jamar Chase. He sat out the season. But the point is, like, he was hurt, and we didn't get a 40 time from him at the combine. We had to wait till the pro day, and so yeah, I mean, there's a few hangups there. He's not your typical number one receiver in this class. So there's some warts. There's some injury stuff, obviously, in some of the middle round guys, and some incomplete portfolios, but I think the more I look at it, the more I realize there'll be some solid Robins, just not as many Batman.
That seems fair.
Yep.
Last question, Eric. We'll let you go. We'll make it a 2-part question just for fun.
Yeah.
Who is a surprise name that's going to go in round 1, and who is one that we've seen off mocked into round 1 that's going to fall out?
Good one. Okay. So I don't know how much of a surprise would Emmanuel Forbes be a surprise? I don't know. You tell me. Is that big enough, or should I go bigger?
At this point, I would say no.
Okay. What about Keon White? I mean, I think probably people have at least gotten to the idea that, okay, I guess somebody could take this guy in round 1. I've heard there are a couple teams that have kind of looked hard at him. So there's another one that maybe's, in slightly off the radar, I guess. Let's put it this way. I don't know that we're going to get 5 receivers. 4 is probably the number, maybe. Could Quentin Johnston fall to round 2?
Very possible.
I think he does, man. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure he goes in round 1, and it would be a little bit out of line with recent years, I think. Check me if I'm wrong, but to have, if we're all arguing they're roughly in the same vicinity, ceiling wise or whatever, different players and all that, but like to have 3 small guys or maybe 4 small guys go before the first over 6 foot receiver to go, that might be a little unusual, but I guess I wouldn't be shocked if it happened. Like the pro day was unimpressive. He's a specific type of tackle breaker that I don't think will quite translate at the next level. He doesn't, I don't know. Do you guys view him as like a 50-50 ball guy? I didn't see a ton of jostling in the air to get it. And I don't know. He's like a less sexy Mike Williams or something. I don't know how I feel about the guy, but that's one that might surprise some people, I think.
Well, he's Brian's wide receiver 1. We fight about him a bit because I don't think he's a contested catcher. He doesn't play like a big receiver, and that's
right. He doesn't play in the air, yeah. But he's fast, though. I mean, he moves, and he just wish his hands were a little more natural. And I don't hate him. I don't at all. He can turn it on. He took over that Kansas game. He's taken over a million games. But I'm ambivalent, I guess, about his upside.
I'm with you. And to go back to Forbes, I think he's going to end up in that in the back. I think people are going to go back to the tape and see, despite being 166 pounds, he plays like a wrecking ball. And there isn't another corner in this class that's got the ball skills that he has.
Boom. That's it.
So,
that's the sale point right there.
Yeah. After the combine, I backed off a little bit, and I was like, 166 pounds, man, that don't fly. But then, you go back and you start thinking about it, and it's like, no, man, no, them ball skills, that's round 1 all day.
I know. And you're willing to live with a couple of, he guesses and he jumps some stuff but like he makes up for it all the time. I love him. I kind of think he's unusual and the weight is an issue, just like it is for Bryce and, any other position where you're undersized like that and you're worried if they can take the wear and tear. And, maybe it's not quite as big a deal because he has the mentality, obviously, to play a physical game but those smaller guys are the ones who are more prone to the hamstrings and the groins and all that too. So I don't know, but he's smooth, man.
Yeah. Well, me and Shane both love him. So
Yeah.
you're preaching to the choir here. But Eric, man, there aren't many people out there that do it better than you, and we can't appreciate it enough. You coming on right this close to the draft. We know how busy you are, and we can't thank you enough for coming on with us tonight.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was a good chat, and I'll have to give you guys a post Kansas City versus Mobile barbecue showdown. Like, I'll see if I can do like a taste test while I'm there. And I don't know, it's a tough one because I like Kansas City, but I like the Mobile style too. So
as long as you avoid Dreamland barbecue and don't let that be the deciding factor in Mobile, we'll be
fair
okay.
enough. I've been there before, so we can say we've already done that one. Yeah. So.
Eric, man, tell everybody where we can find your stuff this close to the draft.
Yeah, it's at NFL.com. I'm on Twitter at sometimes. I've been less on there lately, but draft, I'll be all in. Eric with a C _EDHOLM. And let's have some fun next week, boys.
Love it, man. Eric, appreciate you, man. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Take it easy.
That was good stuff right there, man. Yeah. Eric Edholm, NFL.com. Man, we can't thank him. Like I said, we know how busy he is this time of year, Shane, and for him to come on and take the time out to spend 30 minutes with us, he's great.
Yeah, no, he's phenomenal. He's dialed in, and I just love. He's always very honest and open, and has such good analysis and insight. So it was good. I feel a little more comfortable about some things after talking with him.
Yeah, same here. Glad we all share the same glowing opinion of Emmanuel Forbes.
Future Cincinnati Bengal,
maybe. I think he is definitely going to be on the board if he's available there. All right, we're talking about it quickly because Eric was having some computer issues, so we were kind of going to go to a different segment than he popped on. So let's get back into it, Shane. There's a couple of draft props out there. There's very few. We talked about it. We think the books took a bath last year between the combine and the draft. They're a bit hesitant to put these props out there. But there's three that kind of caught my eye, and I wanted to go over with you. First defensive player off the board right now seems to be overwhelmingly Will Anderson at -275. But if you think there's a little money to be made here, Tyree Wilson is at +260.
It's interesting. Like I kind of toyed with that in a mock draft a couple weeks back of what if Tyree Wilson went above Will Anderson and how could that kind of domino affect things? Like I think it could happen. I'm not the biggest Tyree Wilson guy in the top 5. And so I tend to think NFL teams will play it smart and not do that. But yeah, there might be a little bit of money to be made. I might even go Jalen Carter +550, right? If a team's like character concerns, don't worry us. We think he's the most talented player in the draft. Boom.
To me, for that to work, I think you almost have to have quarterbacks go like one boom, 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 1 through 4 at the top. Yeah. And then Seattle at 5 with their pick of all the defensive players like Jalen Carter more. I think that's how that works out.
Right.
For Carter. I don't think he'll go to Houston or Arizona at 2 or 3.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Will Anderson's got to be the first one off the board either way. But
yeah. I agree. But I saw on Paths of the Draft on NFL Network earlier today before we came on, and that had something interesting. I think it was Lance Zierlein said just in talks, or it might have been Scott Pioli. I can't remember which one it was, but had with talks with teams that there is a concern with Will Anderson that, and it's more of a concern with Alabama in general, is that their players come into the league topped out, so to speak. Like there's not elevation or room to grow into a better player. They are who they are right when they get there. Is that a concern? And where Tyree Wilson, we haven't scratched the surface on what he could be yet.
Look, I feel like that's like a cyclical Alabama thing that comes up every couple years or once, once an Alabama guy like busts, then everyone's like, everyone kind of brings that up. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily wrong, especially when you talk defensive players and offensive linemen. I mean, I think that's fair, but I think when you start playing that game is usually when you draft the wrong guy, right? When it's like, let's find out what this guy can be instead of the guy that literally dominated college football 2 years ago.
It's like we don't have to get cute for the. It's like when you've got a 3rd and 1 play, and instead of just running the ball up the middle, taking the yards and getting the first down, you try to run a reverse or something to try to break a big play, and then you end up getting hit in the backfield for 5, and that's punt. That's just don't be stupid. Take the best player in the draft and be done with it. This one's kind of shifted a little bit in the last week, but first corner off the board right now seems to be overwhelmingly moved to Devin Witherspoon from Illinois, now at minus 250, where it was at one time Christian Gonzalez, who's now at plus 190. And if you're feeling really spunky, Joey Porter Jr. at plus 3,000. You just want to throw a couple bucks on that just to do it.
Brian might be feeling spunky here.
I could be.
This one's interesting to me. I think I'm going to toss a little bit on Christian Gonzalez plus 190. I think Witherspoon could be that guy. I think the Lions probably make the most sense to take Witherspoon over Gonzalez. And I think it's another case of, if they're the first team to take a corner, which seems likely that could happen. But last year, the books got this wrong too. I mean, Sauce Gardner, I think, was minus 300, 350. The time of the draft to be the first corner off the board. That didn't happen. This feels similar, but like Christian Gonzalez is more the athlete outside corner. It's probably the guy that's going first. But that might be a linchpin in some of these mock drafts. Like, where do these corners go in the top 10?
I feel like I hit a little money on that with Stingley last year. I think I bet that there at him to be in the first corner off the board. Last prop we'll talk about. And this another one that's kind of waffled back and forth over the last week. The first tight end off the board. Now currently Notre Dame's Michael Mayer at minus 160, where Dalton Kincaid was at worst even, but I think was a little favorite last week. Now at plus 110, and Darnell Washington, the Georgia tight end, at plus 550.
Yeah, I think Mayer's the right call. I think when Kincaid was like slightly ahead. I think they're all plus money a little bit. When people were kind of moving things around, that was the time to bet on Mayer. And even minus 160, I mean, it's a pretty good price. Like, Dalton Kincaid still is not going to work out. Still has the back. Like, I think there are teams that aren't going to take him or feel comfortable taking him even as a first round talent per se. And Michael Mayer's like rock solid, right? So I even think he's a move up candidate. Maybe a team like Dallas moves up to take him, but like I don't think Green Bay is going to take Dalton Kincaid over Michael Mayer, right?
Right. And I was putting together like a little list of who all has visited what teams, for our big spreadsheet that we keep for the draft. And I think that no other player has visited more teams than Dalton Kincaid. Teams trying to figure this out. Is the back injury, worse or not than what, they're leading on, having their doctors look at him and stuff like that. So, I mean, it feels like more than half the league, and I could be wrong here, has brought in Dalton Kincaid for a visit. So there's a lot of interest out there, if nothing else.
Right. I mean, it is it's the injury that's most impactful to the player because he's not going to work out. It's a back injury. Like, there's I think a lot to go over that teams just want to be sure of. But yeah, when a guy makes that many visits, it usually means good things are on the horizon.
Okay, maybe I overestimated the number, but it's 11.
Still, I mean, that's a third of the league.
It's
that's
a third of the league has brought in Kincaid. So yeah. All right, Shane. I put out a column today over at draftcountdown.com. My 5 guys for the NFL draft. Like, these aren't necessarily who we think are the 5 best players. These are guys that it comes time in the draft room these are your guys. You're an area scout for team A or whatever. These are the guys you would, if somebody asks you, we're in round 5, give us a guy. So I threw out 5 names, and if you've listened to our podcast every week or whatever, you've heard me talk about these guys. I won't, you can read it at draftcount.com, but Jason Brownlee, wide receiver, Southern Miss, obviously was going to be on this list as much as I've talked about him. Couldn't have a list of mine go out without having a South Carolina player. And I feel like Darius Rush, just tremendous process he's had, and getting to see him at the Senior Bowl, big influence on me. I've mentioned Tajay Spears a lot before he blew up the Senior Bowl as well. I really like Jason Taylor. I've written about him a lot this year on the site, the safety from Oklahoma State. And I love Johnny Lumpkin, the tight end from Louisiana. And like I said, he's probably not getting drafted, but he's visited a few teams. I think he's going to be a priority free agent, as a blocking tight end. Guys that can block and play special teams, they're going to make a roster, be it as a late round draft pick or as a free agent. I think Johnny Lumpkin's one of those guys. So those are my 5 guys, Shane. So let's go into a little more detail here with you. Who are Shane's guys in the 2023 NFL draft class?
And I'll kind of list these in the order I think they get drafted in. So my number 1, fringe first round pick. I don't think he goes in the first round, but I would bang the table for him late in round 1. That's Anton Harrison, the offensive tackle from Oklahoma. I feel like I've talked about him on the podcast since we relaunched it because he wasn't getting much publicity, but might be the best pure pass protection off left tackle in this draft. Very finesse. I tend to like those guys. Like, give me someone that can protect the quarterback and I'll make it work. I feel like Anton Harrison has the feet. He has the ability to mirror. I love his kick slide. I think he has everything. I think he's going to be a franchise left tackle, even if you get him in round 2. My second guy, it really was the Senior Bowl that sold him for me, is Keanu Benton, the defensive lineman from Wisconsin. I just love the leverage, the effort, the toughness. A lot of times defensive linemen are tough, I think, even watching the game film. So if they're getting double team consistently, there's very few that can beat that double team if you are your first round pick. Benton's not that guy, but you watch him against Ohio State. I mean, they put Matthew Jones and Luke Whippler, Luke Whippler's going to be a top 100 pick, and they put them on him every play, two heads, and he was, there were times he was still getting through and filling gaps. Like, I want that kind of toughness against the run. I think he has a little bit more pass rush than you think. I like Keanu Benton. Number 3, a guy I've been raving about for years, Tucker Kraft, tight end out of South Dakota State. Comped him as a prospect similar to Travis Kelce as a prospect, whereas kind of more two-way tight end blocker, doesn't look fast, but is always open, making the tough catch and then running guys over after the catch. I think if his health is good, I think Kraft, is going to be a legitimate starting tight end in the league. You can get him around 3, round 4. I love that. Number 4 is Jacorian Bennett, the corner from Maryland. We've talked about on here, I think he actually played better than Deonte Banks on a more consistent basis. Similar to, Darius Rush, South Carolina always suffers that problem where you have a Cam Smith and the other guy starts getting picked on. He's got to step up his game. I think Jacorian Bennett did that, has the speed, has the athleticism, not as big, but he gets in there and he has the skills to position himself to knock passes down. The number 5, I don't know if maybe he's a round 7 pick, but Andre Yeshivas, the receiver from Princeton, I've loved for a while. I have the column up. He didn't quite hit the Christian Watson heights for the draft hype, but I think as a developmental receiver to get that speed, size, and a player who really took a big jump from last year to 2 years ago to this past season playing, really looks like a football player. I think we're going to see Yeshivas in a year or 2 down the line have a role. An injury happens, he gets out there and starts balling out. People are like, whoa, who's this guy from Princeton? So those are my 5. Yeah, that was a fun exercise to look through the list and be like, oh yeah, these are my guys.
Your last 2 guys are the most intriguing for me. Jacorian Bennett is a guy that I think position versatility, special teams, all that is going to work in his favor. And same thing with Andre Yeshivas. I think he can be a versatile wide receiver, whereas play outside, play inside. And I think he's going to hit a lot for special teams coaches around the league. And both those guys probably going to come off the board, I think, early day 3, at worst 5th round, I think, for both those guys. So, yeah, those are some good spots there. But, yeah, I look forward to seeing where these guys come off the board, and it's gonna be fun, man. I'm really looking forward to
can't wait.
8 nights away, from the NFL draft essentially, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But we've got some questions. We didn't get any in the Discord or in the chat, but we have a handful on Twitter, so we'll get to those now. At JBFaz1213 has a couple of questions. Says he's expecting Eric DeCosta, the GM for the Ravens, to trade down at least once, if not twice in the first round. Is he off base, or is he on target for that?
I think the Ravens are a prime candidate to trade, whether it be down or up. I think they are a team that can move around a little bit. Ultimately, maybe they move up for Jackson Smith and Jigba. They even signing, Odell Beckham. I think they're going to look at receiver, but they're not a team that's afraid to move down too. So I don't think it's necessarily off base. But if there was a team in the 20s that I'd say, this is a team that's going to move. I think the Ravens are high on my list because I think they have a lot more holes than it seems. They could use a couple more picks, and DeCosta's a guy that does like to add those picks ultimately.
I've seen several mock drafts in the last week, like multiples, like 3 or 4, that had the Ravens trading all the way up from 22 to like 3 or 4 to draft one of the quarterbacks. That seems freaking wild to me. That
I think they'd have to trade Lamar Jackson to do it, right? And then it's like, well, then is that team really moving down? It just doesn't make much sense to me that
right.
Happen.
I mean, I don't think we've seen a trade to come up that much since, was it Julio Jones? Where a team went up like 18 plus picks or something. I don't know. He also had another question regarding the Ravens, or a statement, I guess. He said his dream scenario is the Ravens getting either Joey Porter Jr. or Bijan Robinson at 22. Either take one of those two or trade back. Your thoughts on whether either one of those will be available at 22 if they stand pat?
I'd be surprised. Like, I don't think Porter – it would take the corners to fall, I think, for Porter to make it down there, right? Like, Devin Witherspoon falls to 16 or 17. I just don't know if Porter makes it there. Bijan, I guess, is possible. We talked about with Eric. We don't know. But and the Ravens, I think, could be a sneaky team to take him. But I'd be surprised. So he can hope for a trade down then.
There you go. At Flows420 ask, best guess on which teams will be picking in the top 10 next year, those that will most likely be looking for a quarterback.
So it's kind of interesting because I started kind of just putting together the bones. I'm going to do a 2024 mock after the draft. So I took the reverse Super Bowl odds for the order, and there's like a clear kind of divide. I feel like right now it's Arizona, Houston, Indianapolis, Tennessee, Tampa Bay. Like all those teams could either take a quarterback this year or need one next year. And then the Rams, Washington, Chicago, Atlanta, feel like teams that are going to need a quarterback, maybe not Chicago, right? So, I think we could be looking at 9 teams taking a quarterback either last year or next year that end up needing one. I guess I would guess Tampa being that team, right? They're too far down in the first round, I think, to get a quarterback this year. And, man, their roster is pretty brutal right now. They're probably going to draft like a running back at some point day 2. So I don't see it as a team that's going to compete. And I think they could be in that Caleb Williams sweepstakes.
Who are the teams that are projected to have multiple first-round picks next year.
Right,
Houston
right,
is one.
Houston has Cleveland's, Chicago has Carolina's. That's it.
And I fully expect Arizona to have somebody's.
Yeah. We'll see if they, it depends how high they go down too. If they like you said, if they bumped one pick to 4, then they're not getting a future first.
Maybe.
No, not for one pick.
Maybe if it's for Stroud or the quarterback. I don't know. I'm not ruling anything out. Last question from Twitter at Nate_Dirt19 wants to know about a rumor that Trey Lance may be getting traded to Minnesota, and it as part of a trade would include Kirk Cousins. You buying any of that?
So Minnesota apparently has been one of the teams that's called the 49ers about Trey Lance. And you think maybe San Francisco, Brock Purdy's probably not going to be ready this season. They're really going to trot out Sam Darnold if they trade Trey Lance. I don't think Kirk Cousins would be included. I think it would be last year Kirk, get Lance healthy, ready, and send him out there. It doesn't make it too much sense to me, but it could happen. If Lance gets moved before or during the draft, Minnesota's a possibility there. Give up their second-round pick, and you don't have to draft, Hendon Hooker in the first, essentially. You could take something else.
Sure. Well, we got a question in the chat, so we'll answer that one here. Wyatt Johnson asked, where do we see A.T. Perry going?
He's kind of a tough one because I think he's on the fringe of day 2. I would say day 3, like round 4 into round 5 is probably where I'll have him end up. But if he goes round 3, it wouldn't shock me. I won't be floored.
I've seen a hand in a lot of the simulators I've gone through. He has come off the board in the late 90s. Very very bottom of round 3. I think early part of day 3 is where early 4th round. I think was, I questioned his long speed, and he kind of answered that a little bit at the combine. So, we'll see. He tested well. He tested a lot better than I thought he would. So I think that gets him probably in that pick between 105 and 120 area seems fair for A.T. Perry.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. So that's going to do it for our questions tonight, Shane. Let's wrap it up here. Next week, we're going to, like last week, we did a live mock draft where it was how we would have picked if we're the GMs of the teams. Next week, it'll be me and you doing the same thing, except we'll be doing a more of a how we think it's actually going to happen mock draft, alternating picks, sort of thing. So that
real deal. This is it. We're gonna 32 for 32. We're gonna end up with our podcast choices, I think.
There you go. And so much stuff coming up over the next week at draftcountdown.com. See, tomorrow Brad's going to look at for the last time, how the consensus, board is breaking down. Friday, I'll have my 5 bold predictions up, and then later that day we'll have a video up where we get not only mine but your 5 bold predictions for the NFL draft. I'll have my final Cincinnati Bengals mock draft. Miranda's going to have a column where she's just going to comb all the rumors and lay it all out for you. And then next week, Monday, my final big board gets released. Top 3, I'm going 300, top 300 players will be up on Monday. Tuesday, Shane, yours will be dropped. Final big board there as well. Wednesday, Brad's going to go with his final mock draft. And then Thursday morning before the draft, 8 a.m., they're going to get yours, Shane. 7-round mock. First thing in the morning, cup of coffee Thursday morning, Shane P. Hallam mock draft.
Yes, 7 rounds.
And then 11 a.m., while you're getting ready to eat your lunch, sitting at your desk, draftcountdown.com for the first time ever, Brian Bosarge 7-round mock draft, Shane. First time ever. I'm going to tell you, I'm not looking forward to writing this. But
Yeah. There's some prep involved to put it together.
it is. And luckily, I took off work on Wednesday, so all day Wednesday I'll be combing over this and trying to get this done. And then let's talk about it. Night one of the NFL draft, star-studded affair here at draftcountdown.com on the live stream. Everybody, a who's who of draft guests coming on. I'll be in for 3 segments with Shane. You're going the distance. You're going all 31 picks on round 1. I'm going to pop in to start the show with you. And then the founder of Draft Countdown, Scott Wright, going to come on. He'll probably get around for the first couple picks. Then Brad Menendez will come in. I'll be back in. Miranda's going to pop in. Our good buddy Pigskin Paul's going to come in for a couple of segments. Nino Brown from Toilets to Titles and CFB Nation's going to come in. We'll have Brad and Miranda around for multiple segments as well. And then I'm going to close it out with you we anticipate the last 30 minutes, or it's just we're going to be recapping for 30 minutes going to the midnight hour on the East Coast, getting you set for day 2. And then night 2, day 3, from pick 32 to 259. It's me and you, buddy. Analyzing every pick when it happens. We won't be out there 7 picks behind like they will in the NFL Network or ESPN broadcast. We get the pick, it's coming out. You're going to know it, and we're going to talk about it. So we did it last year. It was a grind, man, but we got it done, and it was a lot of fun. So we look forward to everybody joining us all 3 days of the 2023 NFL Draft.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's super fun. It's fun just to have, to be able to talk about these picks where you might not get that in a lot of places. So if you want analysis, scouting report, fit, every pick will be here. My goal this year is that I will have watched every single player that gets drafted. It's going to make it happen.
Shane, you only missed one last year, man.
I missed one, and it haunts my dreams. So
how much Yale tape did you watch this year to offset the fact that that's where you missed one from?
I know, look, the Ivy Leagues, and you've been doing yeoman's work. You've been putting together a compilation sheet with all the RAS scores. So if you're green, I'll have watched you by the draft. I guarantee it.
That's good stuff, man. That's going to do it for tonight's episode of the Draft Countdown podcast. If you're following us for the first time on YouTube and you come across this video, hit the like button, subscribe, man, to our channel. We got to get them numbers of subscriber numbers up. Hit the notification bell so you get notified when we go live, be it every Wednesday on our show or for the 3 nights of the NFL Draft. You're going to want to be on that list to get notified when to come on. If you're listening to this audio version, give us a 5-star review, be it on Spotify, be it on Apple Podcasts, be it on wherever, Podbean. We don't care. Just give us a 5-star review wherever you listen. Share that out amongst everybody. Follow me on Twitter at Deep Fried Draft. Follow Shane on Twitter at Shane P. Hallam. Follow Draft Countdown on Twitter at Draft Countdown. And go to draftcountdown.com. We told you what's coming, but go there every single day and get everything you need to know about the NFL Draft. For Shane, I'm Brian. Good night, everybody.